I figured just to get us kicked off, Jordan Turner, amazing
Okay.
mom, friend, wife, business owner, overall badass. If we could just start by you kind of sharing a little bit about your current role or roles and what's taking up the most of your time, I think that's a good place to start.
Okay. I am the founder and owner of the Imperfect Organizer, a home and business organization company. I started it what, 3 years ago now. I think it was 3 years ago. Um, and I'm a mom, and I do all the stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, I know your schedule is like a game of Tetris in
Yeah.
terms of your priorities. And you launching the Imperfect Organizer like a year into the pandemic, like
Hmm.
parenting at home full time was just like one of the most inspirational and motivational things that I had seen in a really long time. I
Oh.
would love for you to describe a little bit about the Imperfect Organizer and what it's all about.
Taking a step back, I was let go from my last full-time position. I had been in the music industry for like 12 years, and my company had to lay off like 15% of their company overnight. And I had tried for a really long time to find another full-time position, but I was in that really awkward stage of having one child and also not wanting to move around a lot. And like going into the interview process was just like, I'd walk into an interview and be like, okay, how do you support families? How do you support mothers in the interview process? And in Texas, people don't like that, especially from their employees. Um, so after a couple of years, I just decided to focus on, um, growing our family because that was a process, and took a lot of time. And when I was mentally ready, I was like, what would I do? Like if it wasn't this path, because the music industry isn't vast in the DFW area. I said, what else would I do? And I've always had a passion for organization. It was something that I really loved my whole life, and it gave me purpose and grounding and really helped me, but really was pushed by you to be like, I know you love doing this. Could you come do this in my house? And I
Yeah,
and I
desperation.
was yeah, and I was like, "Oh yeah, let me try this out and see if it could be a business." And you kind of let me um work through what that looked like, um trial and error when I was finally ready. So I was going to start the business, and then I got pregnant again, and I was like, probably not the best time to do a physically tasking job. So I waited, and then of course the pandemic hit, and uh, then I just was like, I need to do something, and it was on my birthday. I like toyed around with it
Yeah.
for like 6 to 8 months, and put together a website, um, and yeah, you and I were had a few cocktails on my birthday. Me, and my husband stepped into the office and launched the website, and I was like, okay, it's official now. And since then, it's just been, slowly growing to really, the best part is what I want it to be, which is my favorite part of it. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
No, thank you for sharing some of that. And I was not trying to set it up for you to mention me in the story.
It was just like integral to have like support, for me to be like, no, you can do it. Like to be it's for someone else to have the confidence in me, like that imposter syndrome, like, can I really do this? Was really helpful,
Mm,
especially when I'm going into, like, it's not like I'm starting an innocuous business. I mean, I think a lot like, being a counselor, it's like you're taking on people's lives. Like, this is where
yes.
they live. You're going into their personal homes. You're, for me, literally sorting through the junk of their lives, and that's a lot of responsibility, and making sure like I was emotionally supported was a huge part of me like launching.
Yeah. No, I
So
think what you're getting at is so important. I talk to a lot of women about the imposter syndrome side of things when it comes to any type of career or even hobby pursuits, where it's
yeah.
like, oh, do I even deserve to be a part of this like art therapy group because I'm not an actual painter? And so I think what you were getting at in terms of like number one, like the experimentation piece of it, like it was a little bit of trial and error, and I could benefit from you being like, okay, I need a bit of like a sandbox, like a safe place to play,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then having the support in the process. And I think what I learned in that process as someone that is the opposite of you in the organization spectrum
Sure.
was when you came into that kitchen and all you saw was possibility. Like all I
Right.
saw was stress that I can't ever find anything, that I
Right.
can't anything. Like these are the narratives that I've told myself, that I'm just
Sure.
like not good in the kitchen, which wasn't just cooking, it was also just like managing a kitchen as a grown up.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed by your intake process that you were testing out at that point in terms of understanding, like, okay, how do you wish that you were using the space? And then you also had the friend angle where you had like seen my dysfunction in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was nice to have that fresh perspective and someone that could come in and give like honest but compassionate feedback about like, hey, you're using this space like all wrong. Like, here's all the potential. And it got me so excited. So I really saw
Oh,
how, like, you being able to experiment and have such a like dreamer's perspective of like how things could be was actually like helpful for my anxiety, like big time.
really?
Yeah. And
That's
that's an
awesome.
intimate process to like come in and be like, what you're using
I
your kitchen is not great.
I tell you what, and like it's the one thing that I every time I get people like I walk in the door and they just apologize. Oh my gosh, I should have done this. I like all I one of my like my first year operating, I had this female doctor who works with at-risk women with their children. I mean, it was just like she
Yeah.
has a super intense job. She also had 3 kids and a husband who is a lawyer who had a full-time job. And she was just like, I know I could do this. And I was like, yeah, you're fully capable of doing it, but you're also like, have people's lives in your hands. Like, you need help. Like, nobody can do it themselves. And
Mhm.
so people apologize. Oh, it should have been cleaner and I should have picked up. And I'm like, you don't understand. Walking into a space is like pouring a puzzle out on a table.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this going to look like at the end? Oh, this
Mhm.
is so exciting. So I love seeing all the puzzle pieces and oh my gosh, look, there's so much space here. Or, oh, this isn't working for them. That means like I get to help them. And
Mhm.
like they're coming to me with a problem. It's like, oh, I have the solution. I know like what this is going to look like. And so and then also like specifically working with how they can see the vision too. I've learned a lot of that from my husband, who's not like a visual person. I can't just describe someone and he can't like describe something and he can see it in his head like I can. And so like sketching things out. I had a client recently where I had to do that and she was like, "Oh, I see how this is so much more space. I see how this is going to benefit me in the long run," which was super exciting. And when I can like tailor something to that specific person, it's like the best feeling. So
I can
I love
imagine.
tailoring it. So,
I can imagine. There's so many metaphors too between like the organizational process and the mental health therapy process. I
yeah.
mean, even like actually one of my colleagues and an SMU alum, he used the metaphor of like dealing with trauma is like unpacking the junk drawer in your kitchen. Like we
Yep.
all have the junk drawer that we're like somehow like everything is in there but nothing is in there. And
Always.
whenever you get like the gumption or like the energy to like open it up and try to like reorganize it, it like 99% of the time looks worse before it gets better.
Always.
How did I even get all of this crap in here to begin with?
Yep.
Now it's all out, and I'm supposed to like come up with a system to make sense of it. And then I'm supposed
Mm-hmm.
to somehow like put stuff back in. And I really love that because that's how trauma feels and
It,
mental health. Like everybody's like, it's that junk drawer that I don't want to deal with. And oh my
mhm.
God, this is so messy. This is so
Yeah,
messy.
it is. It's incredibly messy. And not only that, but you're like, some of that stuff you need, some of
Yes.
that stuff doesn't work. And like, you
Mhm.
have to categorize it and then you have to put it back in so it can still be used in your life. And I think like that speaks to trauma as well. Like,
Mhm.
gosh, I just want to throw this away. I just want to get rid of it. Like, and you can't. You're like, I need this, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to need this going forward. Um,
Mhm.
and and I think that's where I like to come in, is because usually that's where people get stuck when they're organizing, specifically like their house, which is always a little bit harder because everything is attached to a memory or a possibility or a fear, right?
Mhm.
So, like a lot of men feel like they're being judged for the stuff they have. And I want to tell them, I'm like, I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I really want you this to make your life better so that you can find it and bring it out when you need it and put it away when you don't. Um, but it's sometimes people need help moving through like the emotional attachment to objects. Like I had a client um, who had a traumatic experience losing her father, and she had lost several relatives. And we talked about the importance of like what to keep in their memory and in their honor, and where to keep it and how to keep it so that it has the most um, emotional value, so that like she can go to that place, um, and not keeping every trinket, that she had, like old stuff that doesn't need to be there. So it's
Right.
like being purposeful in that, and then being able to move through it so that the rest of your life isn't just inundated with the chaos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, the intentionality and like being able to appreciate something with more meaning because you're purposely trying to edit other things is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from that.
Yes.
Now, I know in terms of your journey, like you are not a stranger to grief and adversity. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like as you think back over the last, let's call it like 15 to 20 years, which is a lot of career development,
Right.
college, right? Everything since college and during college. Um, is there any point in time where you look back and you think, holy crap, like how did I get through that as it relates to like still showing up for work, right? When like real life stuff is happening.
So I worked in the entertainment industry. I worked in the music industry, which, like, honest to God, you walk into a music industry job, you walk into an entertainment industry job, and they usually immediately have you sign like an NDA and also like other clauses saying, like, hey, if things happen to you while you're here, you can't sue us. Like, that's walking in the door. That's like before you get a job. Um, so, uh, it's been the personalities, like the sort of interpersonal, I think abuse is such a loaded word, but like abuse and like these personalities and these people who are drawn to the entertainment industry. Um, and then uh, there was a lot of that that I've had to deal with, that I've been self-reflective on. It's like,
Mhm.
how did I do that? Why am I good at it? Like, why am I good at navigating those spaces? Um, and how has it really affected me going forward? And really, the hardest part was like I had a couple of bosses who um, had mental health diagnosis, and it was like really toxic work environments. And then I'd move on to another job, and they'd be like, can I reach out to your previous employer? And I'd have to be like, no,
Mhm.
which is really hard to say because it sounds so sketchy when you're in the room. And I'm like, I just don't know who you're going to get on the phone. Like, if this person is going to be vindictive, if this person is going to be abusive, if this person is going to sing my praises, I just don't know. Like, I've had um, lots of employers who cross the line, um, probably legally, as well as just morally. Um, so it's been, uh, I don't think I was ever naive to it. I think I just managed it as it came. And as far as the life stuff, my personal life coming into my work life, um, I am an oversharer, but I find that if you don't share at least somewhat of what you're going through, um, it won't make sense how you might react to things, right? Um, so luckily, I've just found safe people within my work life that I can entrust with that, who are understanding, um, and get it.
Yeah. I love that from a guidance standpoint for young
Mm-hmm.
women and honestly folks of other marginalized identities. I'm thinking like neurodivergence, sexual
Yeah,
identity, like different religious backgrounds here,
yeah,
especially like in the Bible Belt,
mm-hmm.
is practicing the skill of discernment. Like, who do I believe that I can trust? What signals have they given me that I can then feel that it's okay for me to advocate for myself in certain kinds of ways,
Yeah,
right? Because advocacy may require, in some contexts, that you are being vulnerable in a way that probably feels uncomfortable, right? And
yeah,
so I'm thinking, like, especially in some of those roles that you were describing, where the context is like, hey, you're signing an NDA before you even are like talking seriously about any specific role. I mean, goodness, the
yeah.
pressure of that.
And that was like, that was in college. That was for internships.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're
people
so
might,
young.
I'm so young. And luckily, like, I had a mother who prepared me. She worked in an industry that was like male dominated to a T. Um, and so she had lots of advice walking into places like that. And yeah, I got yelled at by, I mean, I got, hit on and yelled at, and then like women would come after me. And it was really interesting. But, I went in with eyes open and my personal boundaries up. I'm very fortunate that, like, through my personal experience, through my personal life, like, I've learned boundaries, and I know where that is, and I know how to, like, keep it at arm's length so that
Mhm.
it didn't penetrate me, because it wasn't on me, it was on them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the boundaries point is really valid. I mean, I even think back to that time frame where you were interviewing after you had your first child
hmm,
and being so clear about like not working events late night and how do you support mothers and parents like you said earlier in the discussion, and that is a
yeah,
way of showing up realistically as your authentic boundaried self,
yeah,
right?
I was,
And typically I make the argument that by being clear about your boundaries you're able to show up as a better employee, as a better partner, mother, right? In this case I almost feel like you dodged a bullet because now hindsight's 2020 and like imperfect organizer wouldn't get to exist had you not been clear about where
yeah,
you were in the season of life with those prospective employers.
yeah, and I was just at that point and was so self-assured in my abilities and who I was as an employee. I was like, I hope you believe me, but I will give you probably too much. But I need to know that you're worth giving everything that I will give you. And if you can't show up with me, and I mean, like, there was one interview that I walked out because I was like, you clearly have no trust in your employees. And I'm not willing to work in a place that gives no trust into human beings and the people they work with, because that's how every interaction will be. And that was really easy for me. And I think it was because I had worked for people um, who were abusive that I wasn't like willing to put myself in that position anymore. Because it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my mental health, which means I couldn't show up for my kids, my husband, my friends, my family. So that's just not something I was willing to give up on. And it was hard. And like even companies who would interview me who were like, oh, running a household is so equivalent, but then wouldn't give me the time of day, like wouldn't call me back. Like, that's not for me. And it's also not on me. Like, this is what I want for my life, which is hard because it's also a shot to the ego because I wanted the job.
Right. Yep. And I think everything that you're saying is so relevant for people that are in those stages of their career, especially now with the economy being the way it is. They can't figure out why they're not getting certain interviews that they seem really qualified for, or they try to be their honest self and then like the company ghosts them or they get rejected, they take an internal hire instead, which is like really I'm seeing a huge effect on people's sense of self-worth and efficacy. And
Oh
what that
man.
sounds like is, am I not actually cut out for this like industry? Like, am I not good at my job? Should I just stop wasting my time with this? Right? Which are all valid questions given the context, but it's heartbreaking to see like how deep it cuts. And so I'm curious, like, if you were able to speak to some of those folks, what's maybe like the one thing that you would say to them as they're trying to navigate circumstances like that?
That it is really hard to reset and to check your ego, right? Because really at the end of the day, it's like, does nobody want me? It's, it after I got let go from what I thought was my dream job, I was devastated. And it was the first time that I was like, I really need to go seek professional help because I didn't trust myself. And I knew that the people in my personal life um, were, even if they were being truthful, I felt like had skin in the game. Like my husband who wanted me to have a job, or my mom who wanted me to like have security. She was like, get a job with good insurance, which like she's just trying to take care of me. But really, what was the best thing for me to do at the time? I think you have to trust yourself, ask for help, seek help, like find yourself. There are great counselors, therapists. I swear I wasn't trying to plug you in. I know that's what you do, but it's true. Having someone who doesn't have an agenda in your life to help you sort through your options, to just be a sounding board, right? Um, and something will come up. It took a long time, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of breaking myself down and building myself back up. Um, and a lot of shame that I put on myself, but eventually I got there. And I'm still dealing with it now. Like I'm still dealing with the shame, like but I'm also like I get to help people. And like there's nothing better than leaving a space and being like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to help me so much." Or I talked to a client of mine and I asked her, "Oh, how's everything holding up?" And she was like, "Everything is exactly where you left it 6 months ago. And my life has been so much easier for it." And like the years of self-doubt and questioning don't compare to that, right? Of like finding your place. So it's scary, but worth it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the word shame and that you still deal with that from time to time.
Yeah.
And I want to share from an outsider's perspective, right? Like
Hmm.
you are like the best mom, you're involved in PTA and baseball, and you've got your kids signed up for like the coolest stuff, and you're just like so involved in the community and own your own business, extremely successful and well loved.
Mm.
So I'm curious what that shame is telling you in those
Yeah.
moments of self-doubt.
Um, I think it's there was a question that I heard recently, like from someone who was like, what would your 10-year-old self say about where you are now?
Mhm.
And my 10-year-old self wanted to be Britney Spears, right? Wanted to be a Broadway star, wanted to be something huge. And so that's where the shame comes in, where it's like, did I not follow my dreams? Did I not go big enough? Um, am I small? Which is ridiculous. And I know not everybody can uh, identify with that, but like even in college, like I worked for the Grammys. I uh, saw that you went, like I worked with giant bands, one of which you went and saw the other night. And I was like, oh yeah, I used to see them all the time, like going into the writer's room. And it felt really important. And it was like this external validation that I'm always sort of seeking. Um, so taking that external validation and bolstering my internal validation has and will always be um, my emotional exercise that I will have to do throughout my life. So I do a lot of like self-validation work, um, just internally all the time. Just like, man, I really do have an amazing husband. I would not have changed that for the world. My kids complete me in a way that is so beautiful. And um, so those small validations I hold on to really deeply.
Mhm.
So
No, I so appreciate I so appreciate your honesty. Seriously, thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. It's interesting because your story can bring comfort to a lot of different types of people. And I think what you just highlighted is for the people that are like dreamers, the
Mhm.
people that like dream big, are not afraid of like big goals and have
Right.
clear vision, right? And life just throws you freaking curveballs, right?
Yeah.
And trying to figure out like, okay, that happened. Like, how do I pivot? What do I do next? How do I make the best of this? How do I make meaning in this process for myself and for the people that I love, that I want to like have a positive effect on?
Yeah.
Um, because conversely, there are folks that what they stress about, what keeps them up at night, is that they cannot visualize like what a future might look like, right?
Sure.
And so that's a very different set of stressors. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, what I heard from you is like, for someone that has dreamed big and continues to dream big and have a big impact, it's like, well, how do I be nimble in the face of reality?
Yeah.
Right. And as my circumstances change, like allowing myself to experience joy, but also like the realism that there might be a little bit of grief with some of the things that have not panned out the way that you would have designed them.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And, surrounding yourself with people who remind you of that. Like my close friend group, it's never like I'm just a mom. It's like you're not just anything. Like we talk like that in our circle. Um and those are things that I hold on to. Like I'm just making an impact in all of these people's homes. I'm just making an impact in my children's life. It's like I am just doing everything, right? And it may be smaller than I thought it was when I was 10 years old, but the impact is just as great in those arenas, right? So, yeah, it's it's a process and things I work on all the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The work that you do on yourself
mhm.
is really incredible. And I think you are an excellent example of someone that sees personal growth, like such ownership over personal growth, and it just like positively affects multiple facets of your life. I would love for you to share like what has been one of the more like interesting or compelling things for you in like the past year, whether it's a book or a podcast or something that you feel has really spurred a lot of momentum for you.
Yeah. I love a podcast. I'm always sending people podcasts. Um uh I find a lot of inspiration in really small words. Um this year has obviously been really uh difficult for me personally, specifically in the last 4 months, but I just take time for self-reflection and take inspiration in the things that come. I mean, I get inspired by things constantly. I mean, like sometimes it's an Instagram video. It's like, oh my God, I completely identify with that. Like I have like recently been going back to church and there was a sermon that a pastor did about Frozen that like spoke to me on such a deep level and broke me in ways that I haven't been broken in a while, which is like such a beautiful thing. And podcasts where like I identify with those things, but I'm just self-reflective. I don't think that I could name one thing. It's just
Yeah.
listening to conversations and letting things speak to me and reflecting on them as I go. Like I've been in my therapy and um, uh, walking through that journey as well.
Yeah.
And there are some times in therapy where it's like I didn't get anything out of it. I just like said my piece for today. There wasn't anything I got back, but I just put all those feelings in one place. But there are some times that like one sentence I was going through therapy once and somebody said the most simple thing, which is like, yeah, you can be mad at them and that's fine. Like you don't have to like them. And I was like, what? I don't have to like them and that's okay. And it was like that validation that was just like bowled me over. So
Yeah. No, I love that answer. I think it just speaks to like a level of curiosity and openness to what is put in front of you and that you get to make meaning of it.
yeah.
I mean, I know, gosh, like I've read books, several books, because you've been like, you need to read this. And I'm like, oh, I did need to read this. Like what
Yeah.
happened to you
Oh my
that
gosh.
that you shared,
Required reading
required reading. And
for
then
all humans.
yeah, right.
For
And
all
then
humans.
all human beings read it. And then
It's
I
like The
also
Great
think,
Gatsby and What Happened to You.
yeah,
And
exactly.
then oh, what's the one by Brene Brown that I love so much?
Braving the
Um,
Wilderness,
no.
Gifts of Imperfection.
No, although I need to read that one too. It's the map Atlas of the Heart.
Oh, this one?
That one right there. I love it because it's just descriptive. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and this is what I'm talking about with finding like tiny bits of inspiration everywhere. With it's like something my son says in the back of the car that just like knocks me off my socks, or like just understanding that like what was the one, it is that when you're like not jealous, it's not jealousy, it's like, oh, I can't remember, it's from Atlas of the Heart. It's just descriptions of feelings
Mhm.
and emotions and where they derive from. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not like jealous, I'm like, I wish I was there. It's not like coming from a place of anger, it's coming from a place of like wanting. And it was just mind blowing. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
No, thank
but
you. No,
Yeah, those
that's
are,
great. And that book is great for that. I actually have a worksheet like on my desk right now where she's going through exactly what you're describing. It's like when we feel this, we go to these places. And like
yes.
jealousy is one of those places, or like contempt is one of those places, but it's often
Yes.
coming from a place of feeling inadequate, or like we're missing out on something, or like we're yearning for something, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes those deeper feelings are really difficult to access, like
Yeah.
to be able to name them and to make sense of them. So
100%. Or
helpful.
like, for me, especially like walking in the world, it's like, how could they have done this? Or why am I so angry at this person? And then like walking back, like, okay, where is this feeling coming from? What am I actually feeling? And like getting to the root cause of like either what they did or how they're reacting or how I'm reacting. Like just understanding the root takes away the anxiety. It's like, oh, I've replaced anxiety, anger, frustration, whatever it is, with understanding and empathy. And I um, try to do that all the time. It makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
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 So
So I've got one more question for you.
okay.
When you think back on how your career has developed,
Hmm.
what one word would you use to describe it?
Opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah.
That
Every
makes
one of
sense.
my Yeah, every one of my jobs, especially in the beginning, was like startup culture. And I learned, like, I was the president of a company when I was 23 years old. I went into a car dealership, like my first job out of college after I graduated. I worked at a Lexus dealership, and they're like, we want to understand online marketing and how to sell cars online. And I had no business being there, but was really idealistic and thought I could change the world, as we all do coming out of school. Um,
One
but
luxury
yeah,
SUV at a time.
exactly. And I, was the president of a company, which was like marketing and how to do accounting. And I just learned so many skills, and everything I did was an opportunity to learn a lesson, to learn a skill, to make a connection, to building what my life is now. And it's pretty fantastic despite
Yeah.
all its bumps and lumps. So
Yeah.
I think opportunity.
All right. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I anticipate that like your words are going to mean a lot to many more people than you probably realize. So, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.